we go. Well, hi, everybody. Happy Tuesday to you and happy Thanksgiving week. Hope your plans are coming along well. Mine are still up in the air, but that shouldn't surprise you. Looking forward to doing some eating at some point this week, though. Uh, I think we should probably get going. I'm a little unsure of tonight's timing. It seems like I added an awful lot of slides, but some of them are just pictures. Um, but last thing I'd want to
Yeah,
do
do
is
the
make this
same.
into the good-natured 2 hours and keep you here past bedtime. So with that, folks, let's go ahead and
No,
get
no,
going
that's
with
okay.
tonight's program. Oh, by the way,
We're
everybody
giving a
check your
ticket.
mutes. I hear some background sounds. If you're not muted, if you could do that, I'd be grateful. Um, we'll get the show on the road.
We just use this.
Try yours. You're independent.
Alrighty. So, this past week we explored the realm once again of the fungi, and we went. But I have to tell you that I couldn't figure out how to put this into polite words in the newspaper article, so I didn't mention it at all. But the actual inspiration for this article on a mushroom, commonly known as shrimp of the woods, actually came from this mushroom here. Folks, if you could mute, please, that'd be great. Um, the This little blob here. I was on a walk a few weeks ago with some of you, the Nature Nerd Clan. We were walking in Norris Woods, which is an Illinois nature preserve. So it's as such, it's recognized for its the conservative nature of a lot of its plants. Things grow there that we don't see in other places, and as such, there's some rules that go along with a nature preserve, being a nature preserve, and one of those things is you're not supposed to walk your dog there. So here we are, we're walking through this nature preserve, and what do we see? Something that looks suspiciously like somebody had walked their dog there, and worse yet, hadn't cleaned up after said dog. Um, so, yeah, that's what got us to stop to examine this thing. Well, we wanted to go in for a closer look, and I was thinking, well, maybe we should touch it, but maybe we should first try to smell it. The thing was, it was tucked underneath a log, and in order to get to the log, um, kind of had to do one of these. I went head over heels for this particular fungus. Um, and to my surprise, actually to my relief, it didn't smell like what we were afraid it was, and it did, in fact, smell like a mushroom. Now, at the time, let's go back to this. At the time, I didn't know that it was an aborted Entoloma abortivum. And even after I was doing some reading on this mushroom, it took some time to learn that a more proper for this mushroom is actually abortive Entoloma. And here's why. So uh, we did kind of break this mushroom up, and you can see on the inside it's got some unusual textures and shapes going on inside. And again, not being fungi experts, we just thought, well, this is an interesting mushroom. We put it back and we moved on. But as I dug further into the story of this Entoloma, it got really interesting. I've mentioned this website before, Tom Volk's Fungi. It's a great website run by a gentleman up in Wisconsin, a mycologist up in Wisconsin, who has a really engaging way of writing. You know, mushrooms and fungi, they can be extremely technical in the verbiage, all the parts you have to learn. Tom writes about them in such a way that it makes it somewhat easier to understand. Um, Now, in this particular article, which dates back to 2006, he called it the aborting entoloma, also known as hunter's heart, taxol coxalcatl, that's the Mexican name for it, or ground prunes, which is oddly appropriate too, in that lumpy form that we saw. It turns out the form, that picture that we took at Norris Woods, where it looked a little bit like something a dog would leave behind, that's not terribly typical. It has more of a blobby texture. Um, but it actually, in looking at Tom's article, he did define what toddle coxal cattle means in Mexican. It means turkey wattle, and the blobbiness. So the wattle is um, the dewlap, or the skin that hangs underneath the chin of a turkey, and the shape does sort of resemble that as well. But the crazy part is why it looks like that. So Tom Volk actually paired up with several other researchers, and they started looking at this aborted, what at the time was called the aborted entoloma. And that was based on some research that goes back several decades, where there was tissue of another mushroom detected within this entoloma. Now, honey mushrooms, Armillaria species, those are another edible mushroom that grows in the woods. And there was Armillaria tissue detected within the entoloma. Now, Armillaria is a well-known parasite. It kills whatever it is growing on. And so the thinking at the time was, well, the honey mushroom must take over the poor defenseless little entoloma and yeah, cause it to get aborted, or grow into this atypical sort of form. Now, if we look at this photo here, we've got some honey mushrooms here. They're the kind of honey-colored mushrooms with the gills here. There's a pair of them in the center. There's one on the left, and then we've got some entolomas in their globular form, and then we've got one entoloma, or shrimp of the woods. We've got it in its before it has become involved with a honey mushroom. That's the gray mushroom with the gill there, third from the right. So what's actually happening, or what appears to be happening, what Tom Volk and his colleagues investigated, was how the entoloma actually overtakes the honey mushroom. So the exact opposite of what was originally thought. They did publish their work. It was it includes all sorts of pictures. So if you like to read stories that have pictures in them, this has plenty. Some of them are a little bit technical, but it does do a very excellent, makes an excellent case for the entoloma actually being the mushroom that engulfs the honey mushroom instead of the other way around. Now, there's still a little bit of debate going on, and in fact, one of Tom Volk's grad students back 15 years ago was asking for samples to be sent so that they could further investigate this relationship. But more recent writings address it as the entoloma overtaking the honey mushroom, and making a good case for calling, rather than the aborted entoloma, the abortive entoloma, for the effect it has on the honey mushrooms that it grows near. Now, the other part of this story was that common name shrimp of the woods, and that got me curious. Does it taste like shrimp? Now, I don't know. I didn't go back. We're not allowed to take anything out of Norris Woods. I didn't go back and harvest any of these abortive entolomas, but I went to Forager Chef, which is a really cool website. If you're at all interested in eating things that grow wild in the outdoors, I encourage you to check it out. But lo and behold, Chef Alan Burgo has a recipe for shrimp of the woods scampi. He stresses in the preparation of this that this mushroom, it has a texture, when it's fully cooked, it has a texture similar to shrimp, but its flavor is rather bland. So he said, before you go about making this recipe, you need to make sure the mushroom is sauteed well, because that as you brown the exterior of it, that's going to help develop some of the flavors. And of course, like most mushrooms, it does absorb what you cook it with, and what's scampi without lots of garlic. So if you want to check this out, go to foragerchef.com. Recipe's not hard to find. And if you do try it, let me know what you think. Love to hear about your adventures, not just in nature, but also in the kitchen as well. Now, this is something I can't tell you how many photos I've taken over the years of this phenomenon here. This actually happened. This photo dates from a couple of weeks ago when Laura, you and I were out. We were on our investigation of the Delnor Woods beavers, and then we were also looking for the elusive sour gum berries. And we happened to notice, yep, here's a walnut stuck in a tree. Well, this happens a lot. And I've also found walnuts on my propane tank. I found walnuts on the windowsill of my lower level of my house. And now here's a few more. This picture on the left, you can see the walnut wasn't found. I took this picture in the spring, late spring, early summer. So it actually, that walnut had been there for a very long time. This walnut on the right, that was a fall photo, I believe, from last year, and the walnut is missing its husk, but it wasn't chewed on. I think these are squirrels. But I've read accounts of crows also caching walnuts. I can't imagine a crow landing on the propane tank on my deck. That would have to have been a squirrel. But um, the other question is why, and I haven't had much luck in finding out any research, any indication that anybody has ever delved into this question. People have anecdotally told me, oh, I heard it's because we're going to have a bad winter, and the squirrels want to make sure they've got some food that's above ground in case all of their food that is below ground is buried in the snow. I've also heard some people say, "Oh, you know what? They just put them there temporarily, and then they come back and they bury them later." Um, they may put them there temporarily and then forget about them. The squirrel memory is not infallible. It's really good, but they do forget some of these things. But um, there's just all these questions running, floating around in my head of why this is. If you have thoughts on it, please go ahead and put them in the chat and we can address them later. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on it as well. Or if you know of somebody who's investigated this and has an answer or has several answers, because a lot of times, you know how these things go, it's more, there isn't just one answer to the question. There's usually several. So would love to hear about it. Would love to hear your thoughts. Um, Also, keep this in mind in a nod to the old Tootsie Roll commercial, the world may never know. So with that, let's go back. I've been revisiting some topics that we've covered in past meetings, and this was one that became really apparent to me last weekend. So, a few weeks ago, we talked about bald cypress and how it's become, I wouldn't say it's super common, but we do see it throughout the Fox River Valley. Sometimes it's planted as a specimen tree. We've got them in a couple places over at Potawatomi Park and at Mount St. Mary's. This photo is actually of Panton Park, which is in South Elgin. It's the park next to the South Elgin Dam on the west side of the river. They've improved it quite a bit recently. They've added a little bandshell concert pavilion on the north end. Throughout all the changes, though, these bald cypress have stood there, and I tell you, when I was there for puppy class with tech support puppy the other day, the colors of this bald cypress just really took my breath away. It was just this rich um, reddish brown color. This is a deciduous conifer, which is kind of unusual. Most of our conifers are evergreens, but the bald cypress does lose its needle-like leaves in the wintertime. So After class, tech support puppy and I walked over and we looked around and we did find some more seeds, just like I'd found a few weeks ago. Remember when we talked about bald cypress, then we said that the seeds float. Well, I didn't get a chance at the time to investigate that, but I did have some time on Saturday. So we walked over, we took one of those seeds and we walked over to the river. Now this seed is actually, it's comprised of several parts, but it stays together loosely. I had to be careful. I actually crushed one by accident. So I carefully brought this one over and uh, launched it into the river. And keep your eye on it. There it goes. They do float. um, so I don't know, where that was going to end up at. If it will actually turn into a bald cypress tree. This is what happens when you handle those. Little conelets, little roughly, they break apart. These are all what are called scales, and inside each scale there's either one or two seeds. So a bald cypress can have sometimes less than a dozen, sometimes quite a bit over a dozen seeds within each one of these little cones. Now, if you're thinking you might want to add a bald cypress to your own land, there's a lot of propagation information on the internet, but they said that the sources I was reading said that it's highly variable how many of these seeds are actually going to germinate. So they recommended planting 10 seeds for every one tree that you want to grow. It prefers an acidic soil and it likes a lot of sunlight, and it needs to be wet in order to germinate, but it can't be submerged for long periods of time. So I don't know, as that little cone went bobbing down the Fox River, if it was going to find a spot to its liking or not. When we look at the map of distribution throughout Illinois, the bald cypress really doesn't come up all that far naturally. It is hardy to, I believe, USDA Zone 4, which is a little north of us. And as I mentioned before, it is planted frequently. I'll even see it sometimes in parkway trees. I believe it's one of the species our Public Works Department offers as an option here in St. Charles for public right-of-way plantings. But it's a tree. If you got a chance, if you know where one is, or if you want to, hop on over to Mount St. Mary's or to Potawatomi, check them out because as beautiful as they are when they're green and they've got those feathery, deciduous needles, check them out now because the color is even more spectacular. Oh, and forgot I put that in there. If you might even get lucky and see a little baby bald cypress growing somewhere downstream of South Elgin. So this is another sign we're seeing out in the woods these days. When we see parts of a tree missing, we tend to think it was a beaver at work, but then when you look at this, even though it's about where a beaver might aim on a tree, you can see that this was not chewed, it was shredded, which means it's not the work of a beaver, but rather another mammal, the white-tailed deer. Specifically, the bucks. We are in the midst of the rut, or the annual breeding season. And this is something bucks do, one of several ways actually that they mark their territory. They have a gland on their forehead, and when they rub usually young trees. In fact, over at Delnor Woods Park, we have a lot of deer that call Delnor Woods, or that area, home. They kind of wander on the east side between Delnor Woods Park, Persimmon Woods Park, and then they cross over Route 25 and go to Norris Woods Park. We've seen some of the same bucks in all three of those locations. So they wander around a little bit. But this time of year they have marked or are marking their territory just to let A, the other bucks know that they're there, and B, to let, of course, the does know that they're there. I was kind of fascinated to learn just how many glands, scent glands, are on a deer. The gland that's responsible for the tree marking is up there, as I mentioned, the forehead gland. They actually have a gland in front of their eyes, the preorbital gland, that creates a waxy substance that as they uh, run their head through uh, trees, twigs, leaves, they can mark their territory using that preorbital gland. They've got glands in their feet, they've got glands in their mouth, they've got glands in their nose, they've got all these different things that they use to mark their territory. Um, and of course, what would a good scent be if not a buck maker? But yeah, there are companies that have replicated some of these scents. This is a product called Buck Fever Forehead Gland Formula. It comes in a spray. I think it also comes in granules. What this is used for is hunters will when you put a scent out there that's unfamiliar to the resident population, they all want to come and check it out, the bucks and the does. So you can see why that would be something that deer hunters might want to invest in. I just think it's kind of cool to see these rubs. Um, they pop up with surprising frequency around here. And as I mentioned at Delnor Woods, we have a lot of small memorial trees that have been planted there. Little trees that are maybe you know 6 inch or less diameter, and more than once we've had to replace those memorial trees because of the bucks and their vigorous action of marking them. So anyway, just something to keep your eye out for. When you see that, you know that there's an active white-tailed deer population in that area. Now, this was a spider. I can't remember if we talked about her before, but I was just thrilled to see her show up in my front yard this year. The garden spiders, some people call them banana spiders. Argiopes are what I've heard them referred to as well. Argiope orantia, that's our largest example in this area. We do have another one, the banded Argiope, that's a little bit smaller. Argiopes, we did talk about this because I remember we pointed out the zipper, that zigzag pattern in the middle of the web. Even if the spider isn't there, which something bad probably would have happened to the spider because otherwise they're always posted there in the center of their web in the daytime. Um, but that zipper in the center, it's called a stabilimentum, and that is the signature of this particular genus of spiders. Um, well, I not only had this one, but I had another one over in the plants by my mailbox, and I actually ran back and forth a couple times to make sure I actually had two. I couldn't believe my luck because I would say in the last 20, 26, 27, 28 years, I've only seen the spider one other time uh, on by my house. So this was super exciting to see the Argiope was back. And even better, look what she left. The spider is not around anymore, but this is the legacy that she left behind. This is a little magnified, but it was good size. If you ever played marbles and you had a shooter, shooters are they're almost as big around as a quarter, maybe between a nickel and a quarter size. This was a good size egg sac that the spider left behind. Um, and I wanted to put it out there. I was mistaken about this for years. This was a photo a reader had sent me several years ago of these spiders, bold markings, yellow and black. I looked at them and I thought, well, that has to be the spiderlings from a garden spider, from an Argiope, because no other spiders around here are marked like that. Well, it wasn't too long ago. I would say within the last year, I was paging through a British publication, and there was an article on spiders, and here was this picture of spiderlings that looked like this, and they said that these are the offspring of this spider here, the cross orb weaver. Um, you can see on the, especially on the lower photo, you can kind of see it on the top photo too, but the cross orb weavers have a white cross on their abdomen. Can you see that marking there? Um, Kind of near where the abdomen will join the cephalothorax. It's the white markings come together in the form of a cross. It's Araneus diadematus, and this is what their spiderlings look like. Um, they eventually, and there's a lot of color variation in that particular species. They can be anywhere from the dark brown we see on the bottom to the orangish brown that we see on the top. This is one of those cosmopolitan species. It's been spread all over the world. If you're up at the top of the John Hancock having dinner, um, you might see these guys spinning webs up there. They are distributed everywhere. I've been so surprised when I've seen them, different places. They get around. Let's just say that. Uh, I believe every continent but Antarctica has the cross orb weaver. So stands to reason that we have a lot of their spiderlings. This particular photo of these black and yellow spiderlings, I believe, came from Campton Hills, but then I believe I got another one from here in St. Charles. So they're all over the place, and it's not the Argiope. So you might be wondering, well, what does a baby Argiope look like? Um, they're pretty bland. They then this is a spider that will usually be in a grassland area or prairie area. They will spin their large orb webs between stems of usually prairie plants. So um, they've got prairie colors when they're younger. The spiderlings are cream colored, tannish. On the right, courtesy of Bug Guide, we have an immature Argiope. Behind it, you can see the zipper, so you know that's what the species is. But those bold black and yellow colorings don't form until after a few molts. When it's, I don't know if it's the very last one or the next to last one, but the spider is pretty well on in its maturity before it develops those adult colors. Now, why does the cross orb weaver have boldly colored spiderlings? I have no idea. Um, if that's a warning coloration of some sort, I don't know that they have any particular toxicity to them any more than any other spiderling. But anyway, just to clarify, and look around if you had seen the webs of Argiopes in your own yards or parks nearby, take a look around and see if you find that those egg cases, they're usually not right where the web is. The spider will usually leave the area of the web and go somewhere else to deposit those eggs. But it's a cool find and it's something worth monitoring. They're pretty popular, I should add. They are pretty popular with both foraging small mammals. Voles and shrews and things will eat spider egg sacs, and also birds spot those and they will go after them as well. So if you find one, keep an eye on it and see what you get come spring. So we're going to go back to Delnor Woods one more time. I took this picture the other day just to show how backed up that stream is. It's completely changed its course now. It used to kind of swerve off to the right, and here you can see it's going off to the left. It's even big enough and still enough to have duckweed growing in it. But in looking at this, and actually, Laura, in talking with you about the beavers, it reminded me we're going to take a trip back in time to November of 2015. Um, Longtime visitors to the park might remember a time when we had not one, not two, but three blue beech or musclewood trees. These were planted on the east side of the pond over there. And I went over there one day, and two were gone completely, and the third one had been topped off. The remaining, what remained here, this trunk that remained was about not quite as tall as me. I'm about 5'9" and a half, and I would say this came up to my nose. It was a pretty tall remnant of the last of the musclewood. And 2 3 days later, this was gone too. The beavers, the Delnor Woods beavers that were there that year, really did a number on those trees, collecting them, hauling them off for their winter cache that they were forming. But what intrigued me about this, look at what this beaver did. It didn't chew it down at the bottom and cause the tree to fall and then take off the uppermost branches. It did chew it at the base, but it took the top branches off from it up being up at least 4 or 5 feet in the air. It chewed it off at the top, kind of the way an arborist would take down a large tree, and they always top it. They take off the larger branches and then they cut down the trunk. And how this is another kind of a mystery, I get. How did the beaver do this? Because they're adapted to many things. They swim really well and they chew really well. I didn't know they could climb really well, but I examined the tree a little more closely, and I took these pictures, and you can see all these scratches. Let's zoom in a little bit. There's those light marks there. Those are all claw marks, scratch marks, much larger than what you'd expect to see from a squirrel. Squirrels leave a lot of scratch marks on bark too, and the bark of the musclewood it's pretty easy to see these kinds of markings because the bark is so smooth. It's why it's called a musclewood tree, because it looks like the sinew of a mussel. But sure enough, there's these claw marks. I think the Delnor Woods beavers have a tree climbing gene. Something, again, I looked, I tried to find research backing that up. I didn't find any reference at all online. If you've heard of tree climbing beavers, put it in the chat or let me know in an email, because I'd love to know more about this. But this is the legacy of the beavers that we have there today. Not only are they really good at cutting down trees, but they might just be able to climb them too. Kind of cool, huh? So, Diane, I have to thank you for this. You'd sent me this email a few weeks ago. Actually, I think it was about October 20th that you sent this. I put it in here because we're supposed to have temperatures in the 50s again, at least for part of tomorrow. Garter snakes are garter snakes and decay snakes or brown snakes are pretty. I wouldn't say they're cold hardy, but they are tolerant of cooler temperatures, and they will take advantage if there's sun tomorrow. They might come out. It's really important for a snake to clear its gut out before it goes into its brumation, or like it's the reptile version of hibernation. And so if it's eaten at all, it's kind of a catch-22, because they want to put enough weight on that they can survive through the winter, but they don't want to have anything remaining in their digestive tract when they actually go into that period of time where their metabolism is quite low. The food could actually rot in their gut and it could kill them. But I love this picture, Diane. Look really closely. This was, I believe, you said at John Doerr Forest Preserve. You can see there's a little squiggle inside that circle. And if we zoom in, sure enough, it was the tail of the WaldoSnake that you were stalking. But it's just such wonderful camouflage. You'd think a snake with a bold yellow line down its back would stick out, but when you look at what's going the on the ground, there's a lot of yellows. There's a lot of dark shaded areas, darkness under the plants. That snake with the yellow stripe blends in really, really well. So thanks, Diane, for for stalking the snake, and then B, sharing the picture that you got. Appreciate that. So this was just kind of a funny little thing. Susie, you had texted me this photo, and yes, this is a judgment-free zone. Um, just a little background couple of weeks ago, we talked about the amazing twisted tree. I did talk to another individual since then who had taken a dendrology class, and he said, well, sometimes trees have, a lot of trees will have a slight twist to them. Just that's just the way the vascular tissue goes up the tree. Uh-oh, what happened here? Let's go down. Um, let's see. Let's go back to current slide. So sometimes trees just have this natural twist to them. And again, we don't really know why this tree was so twisted. This is the tree that grows on the West Side Cemetery that's on Stevens Street in Geneva. Just really striking tree. Again, if you haven't checked it out, I encourage you to do it because it's just really awesome. But lo and behold, Susie was watching television the other night, and what should be in the picture but a tree with a twisted growth habit? Now, this tree's down on the ground, but look at it's got that same sort of spiraling growth to it as the tree in the cemetery in Geneva. And why is this a judgment-free zone? Well, Susie, she even put it in the text, don't judge me. She was watching The Bachelorette. um, Clearly, the Bachelorette and I don't know, the bad dude. I don't know what you call the guy, the contestants, I guess. They weren't paying any attention to this amazing phenomenon of nature that they're sitting on there. But it was pretty cool. And Susie, thanks for spotting that. So, if you have been tuning in to Good Natured for any length of time, the last maybe 6 months or so, you might recall when we were on our kick about will it glow? It started with some articles that I believe were in the New York Times talking about this phenomenon of animals that fluoresce underneath a black light. Now, fluorescence is when the light is reflected off of the animal. The animal isn't actually generating any light. That would be luminescence. But fluorescence is this phenomenon we see here. This is a flying squirrel. So after this word came out of animals that fluoresce, mostly in Australia was where actually that was, I think, what the first article was written about was somebody in a museum in Australia happened to notice platypus was fluorescing under black light. And I have no idea of how they went about discovering that, but the investigation started to grow, and they found other mammals in Australia that fluoresce under black light. Well, then up in Wisconsin, up in Ashland, there was a professor who was out with a black light, and he happened to notice that flying squirrels fluoresce as well, a bright pink color. So we happen to have a flying squirrel in the freezer at Hickory Knolls. And so we hit it with a black light, and sure enough, it fluoresced a bright pink. Opossums are another animal that fluoresces. They're kind of a rainbow. They've got pink under on their underfur. Undercoat is a bright pink color. Their whiskers and their claws are this crazy green color. Anyway, so it's a topic that is endlessly fascinating. And Mike, I have to thank you. You sent me this article this summer, and I kind of delayed acting on it because I wanted to do some investigating around here. But this was a discovery made in Vietnam. Now, I don't know if this particular species, if the common name is the Vietnamese paper wasp. They only referred to it by its Latin name, Polistes brunatus. Um, but it's got a so what we're seeing here on the in the picture is that lime green color. That's the silk that these wasp larvae will create when they are about to pupate. So maybe you've seen at your own house, if you've got paper wasps up in the eaves, when the wasps will make those paper cells, and that is paper that essentially paper. It's chewed up wood fiber. They mix it with their saliva, they spit it back out, and it forms the paper that makes the nest. Well, the silk is a different substance made by the larvae to seal off the chamber that in which they will go into their final stage, go from being a larva through the pupal stage and into their adult stage. Well, anyway, scientists in Vietnam were walking around with black lights at night, and they said that this was just such a breathtaking glow. It's 3 times brighter than most fluorescent terrestrial animals previously known. So, really, really bright. Um, the article was published in August, and the findings they left little doubt that this is a very strong fluorescence on the part of the silk of these wasps. But just like with the scientists in Australia and up in Wisconsin, nobody really knows why this is a thing. The hypotheses generated in this piece included that it might help the larvae camouflage in bright leaves. You can kind of see, if there was bright sunlight hitting the leaves, that color might be replicated. And there are certainly a lot of animals in nature who can see UV in the UV spectrum, so I kind of get that. They said it might serve as a way for these foraging wasps to find their nests. It might not have anything to do with the larvae, but it might help the adults in the colony. It might be a warning for bigger wasps to stay away. I guess the guard wasps here might attack a predatory wasp. Don't know exactly where they were going with that, but it was again a hypothesis. I thought this one was good. It might shield the developing larvae from harmful UV rays. So lots of different suppositions, no real answers, but yet another example of a cool thing that glows under black light. Now, it also prompted the question in my mind, and that's why this took so long to talk about during the program. I wanted to know, do our local Polistes species glow under black light when they're in their pupal phase? So, oh, that's right. The other thing that's an overriding theme throughout all these different articles, these things that glow under black light, it may have no function at all. It might just be a cool thing that we found because we've got, fun toys and maybe a little too much time on our hands. But it did prompt the question to me, do our local paper wasps also glow? This is what I took. This was a nest that was dropped off by my former coworker Lisa. I was talking to her about this phenomenon, and I said, the one thing I can't find is a paper wasp nest with silk caps. I've been looking. I looked through all of our collections at Hickory Knolls. I don't have any paper wasp nests on my house this year. Couldn't find one. She said, "Oh, I'll bring you one." So this is what she brought. If we zoom in, so that kind of teal colored there in the side here. Well, let's just zoom in. There definitely was a different color fluorescing from those silken chambers, and there was also silk remnants inside each of those little cells. So, and this also, I don't have the proper photography equipment, or even if I did, frankly, I wouldn't know how to use it. But to really capture the intensity of the glow, it wasn't anything. I wouldn't say it was 3 times as bright as anything I've ever seen, but there was a definite change in the hues to these cells that had been either the ones that are open now because the larvae have left, or these ones that are still capped that have this greenish kind of glow to them. So I was excited to see that because we did have the disappointment from a few weeks ago because I'd heard that least weasels will fluoresce under black light, and this taxidermied specimen that we have now didn't fluoresce at all. I'd also heard that black locust, the wood of the black locust tree will fluoresce under black light. And I didn't have any luck with that either, even though a lot of woodworking websites have photos of it. So anyway, I wouldn't really call this a overriding success, a phenomenal success, but it did show that there was a little something going on there. Also, kind of makes me want to get my hands on a Vietnamese wasp nest. Hopefully, without the Vietnamese wasps. Anyway, just something kind of cool. Wanted to do a follow up on that. And then, Bob, I have to thank you for giving us a heads up. Now through January 8th, the Field Museum is hosting an exhibit called Wild Color, which, yes, you guessed it, it does include a section on animals that fluoresce. So here is, from what I understand, Bob, I guess you see the animal under regular coloration and then you push a button or something and the black light comes on. So here's a platypus. Here's a barred owl, so getting more local. That's kind of cool. And then this is a scorpion, and I've heard this from friends of mine who've either visited or actually now live in the desert that yeah, scorpions have an incredible fluorescence under UV. And in fact, it's recommended if you travel out there to hit your shoes with a black light, or at least give them a good shake before you put them on, because of the healthy scorpion population that they have out there. Anyway, just kind of cool. Christmas is coming. If you want to try some of this stuff yourself, maybe ask Santa for a black light of your very own. Now, we're gonna wrap up here with kind of a funny thing that was going on at Hickory Knolls the other day. Um, in 2019, we partnered, or were asked actually to partner with the Chicago Steel hockey team. That's the one that plays over at the ice rink that's over by the Cougar Stadium on Kirk Road. They had a night at the races during one of their hockey games. Well, they're back doing in-person games again this year, and they asked us back again. So they are creating a series of promotions. They had one of their stars come out and interview the turtles, asking them questions about how they're getting ready for the event. So they talked to each one of our box turtles. I believe in the chair there, that was Myrtle. That's our little eastern box turtle. And then after they finished this part of the promo, they started walking around and they saw all the taxidermied animals that we have. And there was we've got a bison, and I don't know if it's a team or a teammate that goes by the name of Buffalo. There we had a red-tailed hawk, and they have again either a team or a teammate that goes by the name of Hawk. So they extended these interviews and they started talking to the taxidermy in the lobby of the Nature Center. They then found our cougar, and so we got the ladder out, and he did an interview with the cougar at Hickory Knolls. You never know what you're going to see when you walk into the Nature Center. I did want to toss it out too if you're at all interested in seeing these promos. They'll be on the Chicago Steel website, or if you want to see the turtles themselves, here we've got this looks like Myrtle, and in the center there, number 23, that's Daisy, and then crossing the finish line, he was the champion that night, that is Samsonite. Turtle night at the races, or hockey's night at the turtle races, whatever they're calling this thing. It is a week from Friday, December 3rd. The Chicago Steel will be playing the Dubuque Fighting Saints. Puck drops at 7:05. I believe the turtle races will take place during the oh gosh, I'm not a hockey fan. It's the time in between the periods of the game. So if you're not doing anything, you want to come out, support a local hockey team, and cheer on some turtles, keep that in mind for Friday, December 3rd. With that, I'm going to stop the screen share and I'm going to turn it over to you. Um, and boy, can you guys hear me? The suddenly my sound got kind of weird.
I can hear you.
Okay, good. Thanks. Um, yes, so Diane, the snake did not want to be photographed. That's the story of my life. Most snake pictures that I have are of the tail of the snake because they just the last thing they want to do is be noticed. But it was a great picture, and I appreciate you sharing it with us. Um, Okay, Kay, please explain the species of bald cypress found locally and those found in water. An example would be those found in southern Illinois. Uh, you know, the species name, Kay, it's the same species. I don't know if what, like, say, what the city of St. Charles offers, if it's a particular variety, but I know when they are actually sitting in water, like those ones down south, uh, they send up knees, and we see that to varying degrees amongst the trees that are growing on land. Um, as far as I know, it's the same species. If somebody else knows different, please feel free to chime in with that. But the species name of what we've talked about this website before too, Illinois Wildflowers. Um, that is the source that I go to for information about these plants, and it's well, I was going to put the species name down. It's taxi. Let me look it up here. But it was the same species name, and that distribution that I mentioned. I was using their map as a source, and it grows in the wild just in the southernmost counties, and then a little bit up along the Ohio River on the east side of the state. Um, but let me just double check here. And again, I don't know if this like um, what's offered by the city of St. Charles, if it's a cultivar. Um, I got kicked off our park district Wi-Fi. Um, uh, Taxodium distichum is that's the species, and oh, they call it russet red. That's a good name. I should have used those descriptive terms when I was talking about it. Um, but yeah, that's what I've got, Kay. I don't know if that answers your question, or if you've got other ones.
Great, I'll check that out. Thanks.
Yeah, sure. It's something they seem to do okay around here, and I don't know if I accidentally am, spreading something that, by tossing that those seeds into the water the way I did, but they are planted, like our own park district plants them in our parks. So even though they're not considered native to Kane County, they are certainly planted around here pretty frequently. Any other questions? No. Quiet group tonight? Well, I very much appreciate everybody tuning in this evening. Great to see y'all. And again, happy and healthy Thanksgiving to everyone. I will look forward, hopefully, to seeing you back again next Tuesday. We'll be taking a look at and since we've been talking about what's native around here, we're going to look at Oriental bittersweet, which is become quite the pernicious invader of our local woods, and it's something I thought might make a timely column, so that'll be appearing in this Thursday's newspaper because it is frequently incorporated into holiday arrangements. So we're going to take a look at that. We've got some good news about barn owls, B-A-R-N, barn owls, to share with you, and some interesting tracks that I found along the pond at where else but Delnor Woods. Um, oh, okay. And when I was bald cypress was by itself. Okay, so it doesn't have a lot of other species. Thanks for that, Anne. Appreciate that chiming in because I only know of it from what I've been able to see and then learn on my own. So appreciate you chiming in with that. Anyway, folks, happy Thanksgiving week. Be safe, be well. Hope to see you back again next week. Take care.
Happy Thanksgiving. Bye.
Happy
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Happy
Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving.
Take care, everyone.
Thanksgiving, Pam.
Thanks, Pam.
Let's see. Oh, I was going to start this. There we go. I remembered.
I miss seeing you.
Yeah.